Sunday, the kind of Sunday where time stretches thin, where the world outside feels quiet, almost unreal. The town moves at a slower rhythm, stores closing early, streets emptying out by dusk, the sky a dull wash of winter gray. I'm in my living room, half sunken into my couch, wrapped in the kind of lazy stillness that comes after a long week. TV on low, a bottle of beer sweating on the coffee table, a half-eaten bag of chips within arm's reach. I live alone, always have since moving out after high school. My house isn't much, 1 story, 1 bedroom, barely enough space to feel like a home. But it's mine, and that's enough. There's something oddly comforting about Sundays like this. No obligations, no one to answer to. Just me, my own thoughts, the distant hum of life outside. I glance at my phone, 7:43 p.m. Feels later. For a second, I think about going for a walk, clear my head, shake off the heaviness of the evening. But instead, I stay put. The TV flickers. The sound of a laugh track drifts through the room, but I'm not really watching. Then, a sharp, jarring buzz. My phone. Not a text, not a call, an alert. Do not look at them. I stare at the words, my mind sluggish to process. The message is stark, simple, devoid of context. No sender information, just those 5 words glowing in the dim light of my living room. A mistake maybe? A prank? But something about it, the urgency, the absence of explanation, makes my stomach twist. The house feels quieter now, the air heavier. Outside, the wind shifts, rustling the trees just beyond my window. A mandatory nationwide broadcast cuts into the TV and phone screen. They have arrived, shelter immediately, do not look at them. The TV screen, once flickering with mindless sitcoms, now shows a pale-faced news anchor, his tie slightly askew, his forehead glistening under the harsh studio lights. His voice is steady but strained, each syllable weighted with barely contained panic.
If you are indoors, remain where you are. Lock all windows and doors. Do not attempt to leave your home. Under no circumstances should you attempt to engage or observe them.
Behind him, the newsroom is in chaos. Producers murmuring, people hurrying out of frame. A second anchor, a woman, sits beside him, her fingers gripping the desk. Her eyes dart towards something off-screen. The broadcast glitches, static hissing for a moment before the image stabilizes again. The male anchor swallows hard, staring directly into the camera.
They're here!
The words hang in the air like a funeral bell. Then the screen distorts again. The image flickers violently, the colors bleeding into one another. The anchor's face warps for a split second. His mouth stretches too wide, his eyes unfocused, like he's looking past the camera at something unseen. Behind him, the newsroom descends into chaos. Someone screams. A shadow flits across the screen, an elongated form moving unnaturally fast. The female anchor jolts upright, knocking over her chair. Her mouth is open, but the sound cuts in and out, fractured by static. The screen glitches harder, lines tearing through the image. The male anchor stares at something just off screen, frozen in place, before his head snaps toward the camera, as if he's just become aware of the audience watching. His mouth moves, shaping words that never reach the speakers. A deep, unnatural hum seeps through the speakers, low and vibrating like a massive engine idling just outside. The newsroom behind him collapses into full-blown hysteria. Chairs screech against the floor, equipment topples, and unseen figures wail in distorted, inhuman pitches. Something heavy slams into the camera, causing the screen to jolt violently. For a moment, the screen catches a frame. Something in the background, something tall and jagged, its form impossible to fully register. The female anchor clutches her head, eyes bulging, her mouth a silent, contorted scream. A producer sprints across the room, his body bending unnaturally as if his limbs have forgotten how to move correctly. Then, an ear-piercing shriek cuts through everything. The image distorts, writhing with static and twisted shapes. The male anchor's face stretches again, his jaw widening, unhinging like a snake's. His eyes flicker, replaced by twin voids of absolute black. Silence. The broadcast ends. A wall of static replaces the image, crackling loud in the silence of my living room. My breath is shallow, my fingers gripping the couch's fabric. My mind races, searching for any rational explanation, but nothing makes sense. The images, the sounds, they felt too real, too visceral. A cold, creeping dread settles in my chest, and I realize I'm afraid to move, afraid to even breathe too loudly. Then, a voice from outside.
Hey, George!
It's Mark, my neighbor from across the street. His voice carries through the night, casual but tinged with unease.
What the hell is up with this message? You see this?
Slowly, I rise from the couch, my legs tense, and make my way to the window. My fingers tremble as I pull the curtain aside just enough to see outside. Mark stands in the middle of the street, his phone glowing in his hand. He's looking straight at my house, his expression twisted in confusion. Then, something shifts. My gaze moves past Mark, to his house, to the roof above it. A figure perches there, dark, unmoving, its limbs too long, its posture unnatural. My breath catches in my throat as the thing tilts its head, its featureless face turning toward me. And then, it moves. "Mark!" I yell, my voice cracking. "Get inside, now!" Mark blinks, confused.
What? What are you talking about?
The figure shifts, dropping from the rooftop with a silent, unnatural grace. It lands behind Mark, its movements fluid but wrong. It begins to glide toward him, closing the distance without a sound. "Mark!" I shout again, panic rising in my throat. "Behind you! Get inside!" But Mark only frowns, still oblivious, still staring at me like I'm the one acting crazy.
Dude, what's wrong with you?
His voice is clear, unaffected, as if nothing is happening. The thing is almost upon him now. I squeeze my eyes shut, heart hammering, and then, silence. I open my eyes, forcing myself to look at Mark again. He's still there, standing in the same spot, his expression unchanged. Nothing is behind him. My stomach twists as realization hits me like ice through my veins. I shouldn't look at them. Mark's expression changes. His eyes dart upward, locking onto something above my house. His mouth opens slightly and he starts backing away.
George, there's something on your roof,
he says, his voice thin, trembling. "Don't look!" I shout, but it's too late. His face twists in confusion, then fear, and he suddenly turns, bolting toward his house. He keeps glancing over his shoulder, his panic growing with each step. I can't see what he's looking at. I won't make the same mistake. My hands shake as I yank the curtain shut, squeezing my eyes closed. I take a shuddering breath, willing my heart to slow down. The room is too quiet, the air too thick. Then I hear it. The same inhuman sounds from the emergency broadcast. Low, distorted, unnatural. It echoes through the street, growing louder, reverberating through my skull. A scream pierces the night. Mark's scream. And then silence. I hesitate, then inch toward the window again, my breath shallow. My fingers tremble as I pull the curtain aside. Nothing. No sign of Mark. No movement. Just the empty street bathed in eerie, flickering light. It's as if he was never there. My pulse pounds in my ears as I scan the neighborhood, and then, in the edges of my vision, I begin to notice something. Figures. Tall, unmoving, perched on every rooftop. They stand in complete stillness, their presence unnatural and oppressive. My chest tightens. They aren't moving, but they are everywhere. I yank the curtains shut, my breath coming in sharp gasps. My hands are clammy, shaking as I push myself away from the window. My mind screams for calm, for logic, but all I can feel is the oppressive weight of their presence lingering just beyond the walls. I force myself toward the kitchen, each step slow and unsteady. I reach the sink and twist the faucet, splashing cold water on my face, trying to ground myself in something, anything real. The water drips from my chin as I grab a glass, my fingers gripping the smooth surface tightly. I take a long, slow drink, the cool liquid sliding down my throat, but it does nothing to quiet the panic creeping up my spine. I need to see if anything has changed. Forcing myself to move, I step cautiously back into the living room, the weight of the silence pressing down on me. My fingers tremble as I grab the remote and turn on the TV, flipping through the channels. Nothing. Every station is the same. Black screens, static, or the no signal message blinking endlessly. No news. No emergency updates, just emptiness. A cold knot tightens in my stomach. The world outside feels like it's slipping further away. Then my phone rings. I freeze, staring at the screen. My breath catches in my throat as I see the caller ID, my own number. My thumb hovers over the screen before, against every instinct screaming at me to ignore it, I answer. At first there's nothing, just a faint hiss of static, then a whisper. You already saw them, didn't you? The voice is mine. I grip the phone so tightly my fingers ache. The line crackles, distorts. Then the call disconnects. Silence stretches around me, heavier than before. Desperate for some kind of normalcy, I fumble for my phone, my fingers shaking as I unlock the screen. I scroll through my contacts, tapping on my best friend's number. The call rings once, twice. Then static fills my ear. Not just any static, something layered beneath it. Faint breathing, a whisper I can't quite make out. I end the call, my throat dry, and try my sister's number instead. The same result. Static, then silence. Panic claws at my chest as I try my parents next, then anyone in my recent calls. Each attempt ends the same way, an empty void on the other end of the line, as if the whole world has gone silent. The realization seeps into my bones. I am alone. No one is answering, or maybe they can't. I take a deep breath, trying to push the fear away. My body is trembling, my mind grasping for any sense of normalcy. I decide to go to the bedroom, to lay down, to try to convince myself that this isn't real. The bed feels cold, the sheets pressing against my skin like a weight. I close my eyes, focusing on my breathing, trying to slow my racing heart. Then, a sharp vibration against my nightstand. My phone. I sit up staring at the screen. Another alert. Do not think about them. I try. I really try. I force my thoughts to wander to anything. Work, an old memory, a stupid song stuck in my head. But the more I push, the more they linger in the edges of my mind. The figures on the rooftops, the empty street, the silence. I shift in bed, gripping the blanket tightly, my breathing uneven. I close my eyes, willing myself to ignore everything. Then, I see it. A silhouette at my bedroom window, barely visible through the curtain. My body locks up. I don't move. I don't breathe. The room feels frozen in time, trapped in the suffocating stillness. A faint tapping at the glass. Slow, deliberate. I squeeze my eyes shut, pressing my hands against my ears, trying to block out everything. Don't think. Don't look. Don't acknowledge. The tapping continues. It grows louder. What was once a slow, deliberate knock turns chaotic, frantic. The sound scrapes against my nerves, an unnatural rhythm that makes my stomach twist. It's no longer just tapping. It's knocking, pounding, rattling the glass like something is trying to get in. Then, beneath the noise, I hear it. The hum. The same deep, vibrating hum from the emergency broadcast. It seeps into my bones, into my skull, rattling every thought I try to hold on to. I try not to think about them, try to push their presence from my mind, but it's useless. They are all I can think about. I can't take it anymore. I leap from my bed, my heart hammering, and rush to the living room, unsure of what to do. My breath is ragged, my limbs shaking with adrenaline. I need to escape this, whatever this is. Then, I hear a frantic knocking at the door. The knocking grows louder, more desperate, shaking the door frame. Then, from the front window, silhouettes emerge. Tall, unmoving figures pressed against the glass, their presence oppressive, suffocating. My hands fly to my ears. I squeeze my eyes shut. Think of something else, anything else. My life, my family, moments from before all of this started. The pounding continues. Mark. I think about Mark, and then a voice raw with panic.
They're everywhere. Let me in.
It's Mark. My pulse spikes. I hesitate, my fingers hovering over the deadbolt. Something about his voice. It sounds strained, almost distorted, but the fear in his tone is real. I take a slow breath, forcing myself forward. I check the peephole. Mark is there, but his face is wrong. His eyes are too wide, his pupils swallowed by darkness. His lips don't move, yet I hear his voice, urgent and desperate.
Please.
I blink. Mark is closer. His face is pressed against the peephole now, his breath fogging the glass. I blink again. He's gone. The knocking stopped. The air feels wrong, thick. My breath is shallow, my limbs locked in place. I turn and scan the room, heart hammering against my ribs. The silence is deafening. Then, from the hallway, a whisper. My name, but it's not Mark's voice. It's hers, my sister. My chest tightens. I haven't spoken to her in weeks, and yet she sounds close. So close, as if she's just around the corner. The kitchen. I step forward, slowly, my breath shallow. The room stretches ahead. My fingers graze the edge of the doorway as I pause, listening.
George!
She calls again. Her voice is gentle, familiar. Sarah? No response. I inch forward. My heartbeat pounds against my ribs. The kitchen is just ahead, and the voice.
George, come here!
There's something about the way she says it, something almost rehearsed, like she's repeating a line. I grip the door frame and lean in. The kitchen is empty, but the voice.
George!
This time it's not coming from ahead, it's behind me. I jump, my body reacting before my mind can catch up. My legs feel weak, unsteady beneath me. I don't think, I just move. My feet propel me forward, into the kitchen, my back pressing against the cabinets as I sink to the floor. The cold tile shocks my skin through my clothes, grounding me just enough to keep my thoughts from spiraling. I press myself tighter against the counter, pulling my knees to my chest. My fingers clutch at the edges of the cool wood, desperate for some kind of stability. The doorway looms ahead, a dark frame against the dim light. My eyes lock onto it, waiting, expecting something to appear. But it's silent. The absence of sound feels unnatural, like the world is holding its breath. My own breathing is too loud, too ragged. Every muscle in my body tenses, preparing for something unseen. A creak, soft, just outside the doorway. I squeeze my eyes shut, willing it all away, but I can still feel it. A presence, lingering, watching. I can't move, I can't breathe. And then, barely above a whisper,
George, come here!
I shudder. It's her voice again, my sister's, but I know it isn't her. Then I start hearing footsteps, slow, just outside the kitchen doorway. And then, my sister's voice again.
George, it's me, Sarah.
Something in my mind twists, a cold, creeping realization blooming at the edges of my thoughts. I know that voice. It's hers, but it isn't. The intonation is too measured, too deliberate, as if someone or something is trying to mimic her. I shake my head, pressing my back harder against the cabinets. My thoughts race, trying to make sense of it. First Mark, now Sarah. The way they appear, the way they sound, too perfect, too unnatural. Because I thought about them. The moment my mind latched onto their names, they took form. My breathing turned shallow. My heart pounds. The entities. They aren't just here. They are listening. They are becoming. I need to stop thinking about them. I squeeze my eyes shut, forcing my mind away from the dread creeping into my bones. I try to focus on something else. Anything else. Flowers. The sun. The warmth of summer on my skin. A breeze carrying the scent of fresh grass. I cling to these images, willing them to push out the fear, to take up space in my mind where the entities lurk. I take a shaky breath, and when I open my eyes, I see it. A few flowers in the corner of the kitchen, pale, delicate petals resting against the tiled floor, as if they had been there all along. And outside, through the thin curtains covering the window, I see a faint light, golden and warm, spilling in from an unseen source. For the first time since this nightmare began, something inside me stirs, hope. But then I hear a loud noise coming from the living room. The TV, a burst of static, harsh and grating, fills the air. I scramble to my feet, my pulse hammering as I inch toward the doorway. The static intensifies, layered with something else. Voices, whispers overlapping, indecipherable yet urgent. I step into the living room, my stomach nodding as I fix my gaze on the TV screen. The static distorts, flickering between blackness and scrambled images. Then, another emergency broadcast. The screen clears, revealing the same news anchor from before. But something is different. His suit is disheveled, his face pale and glistening with sweat. His hands grip the desk like he's holding himself together. Behind him, the newsroom is barely lit, figures moving just out of focus, darting in and out of the shadows. His lips part, and his voice comes out ragged, shaking.
Do not think about them. Do not speak about them. Do not acknowledge them.
The words drill into me. My breath catches. The camera trembles, the image fracturing for a moment. When it stabilizes, the anchor's eyes are locked onto the camera, onto me. His pupils are wide, swallowing the color of his irises. His mouth moves again, lips forming words I cannot hear. Then his eyes darken, pitch black voids swallowing everything. The veins beneath his skin bulge, turning an eerie shade of blue, spreading like cracked ice across his face. His skin pales, almost translucent, stretched too tight over his skull. And then he moves closer. The camera jerks forward as if something is dragging it toward him. The screen distorts, flickering erratically, his face filling the entire frame. His mouth twists, warping into something unnatural. When he speaks, his voice is wrong, deep, guttural, reverberating through the speakers like a monstrous echo.
They're already inside.
My stomach drops. Then, in a voice so low it feels like it's crawling under my skin, he says,
Don't look behind you.
I freeze, my breath catching in my throat. My body locks up, unable to move, unable to even think beyond those words. The anchor's face remains on the screen, an eerie grin spreading across his unnatural features, his pitch black eyes locked onto mine. My fingers twitch at my sides, but I don't turn. I don't dare. Then, the screen flickers, the image shifting into something else, grainy, distorted. The newsroom vanishes, replaced by a dimly lit space. I squint, trying to make sense of what I'm seeing. The grainy footage shakes slightly, as if filmed by an unsteady hand. The camera focuses on a figure standing in the middle of the room, facing away from the screen. A person. My pulse pounds harder. The camera inches closer to the figure, moving slowly, deliberately. I lean forward, my breath uneven, trying to make out the details through the distortion. I stare, unable to comprehend. The image on the screen continues to advance toward the figure, step by step. The static hisses louder, swallowing the faint breathing now leaking through the speakers. It takes me a second to realize. The breathing isn't coming from the TV, it's behind me. A shudder runs down my spine. My fingers curl into the fabric of my shirt, my entire body screaming not to move. The TV screen is shaking now, the image warping, the camera getting closer and closer. The breathing grows louder, right behind me. I don't turn, I don't move. My entire body is frozen, locked in place by something deeper than fear. The TV flickers one last time before shutting off completely, plunging the room into silence. Then a vibration in my hand, my phone, a notification. You followed the rules. You may continue. My breath shudders out of me. The air around me no longer feels heavy, suffocating. The presence, whatever it was, seems to retreat. The room is still, unnaturally so, but I can move again. I don't waste a second. I bolt to the door and throw it open, stepping into the cold night. The street looks the same. The houses, the street lights, the quiet. It's normal. No figures on rooftops, nothing. Without thinking, I run across the street and pound on Mark's door. My heart slams in my chest as I wait. Seconds feel like hours. The lock clicks. The door swings open, and Mark is standing there, rubbing his eyes like I just woke him up.
Whoa, man.
He mutters, confused.
Calm down, what's up?
I stare at him, my pulse still racing. You were just at my door. You saw them. You were screaming. Mark frowns.
What? No, I've been asleep. What the hell are you talking about?
I shake my head, stepping back. No, I saw you. I I trail off, a deep unease settling into my chest. Mark looks genuinely puzzled, blinking at me like I've lost my mind. His house behind him is warm, untouched, nothing out of place. The world outside seems normal, too normal. I feel my phone in my hand. My fingers clench around it as I pull it up to check the screen. My call log is empty. I scroll frantically looking for any evidence, any missed calls, any record of me dialing Mark, my sister, anyone. But there's nothing. No calls made, no messages received. I swallow hard, my throat dry. I tap my sister's number, pressing the phone to my ear. It rings. Once, twice. Then she picks up, her voice groggy.
George, what the hell? It's late.
Sarah, did you get the alert, the emergency broadcast? She sighs.
Jesus, George, if this is some weird prank, I'm not in the mood. I have work in the morning.
No, Sarah, listen to me. Something happened.
Good night, George.
The call disconnects. I lower the phone slowly, my hand trembling. Mark is still standing there, watching me with an expression caught between concern and irritation.
Dude,
He says, running a hand through his hair.
are you okay?
I don't answer. I just take a step back, then another. I look past him into the shadowed hallway of his house, and for just a second, I swear I see something shift. A flicker of movement just beyond the light. I don't wait to find out what it is. I turn and walk away, my phone still clutched in my shaking hand. As I step back onto my porch, my screen lights up with a final message. You won't be so lucky next time. The next morning, I wake up feeling like I barely slept at all. My body is exhausted, my mind still tangled in the memories of last night. But the world outside my window is calm, normal. I grab my phone and check the news, scrolling through headlines, searching for any mention of the emergency alert, the figures, the broadcast, anything. But there's nothing, no reports, no warnings, no panic. As if none of it ever happened. My fingers tighten around the phone. I check my call history again. Still nothing. My stomach twists, but I try to shake it off. Maybe I dreamed it all. Maybe stress and exhaustion have finally messed with my head. I head to the kitchen, trying to shake off the fog in my brain. I pour myself a glass of orange juice, taking a long sip, letting the cold tang wake me up. Then, I freeze. In the corner of the kitchen, near the cabinets, I see them. A few flowers, pale and withered, their petals curled inward like dying embers. The same flowers from last night, the ones I imagined, but they're real. A cold chill runs down my spine. I set the glass down slowly, my hands trembling. I thought I made them up. I thought I was safe, but I wasn't supposed to think about them. I wasn't supposed to remember. Hello, creepy community. Thank you for watching. This story was written by me. I haven't written a story in a while, so please let me know if you'd like to hear more stories in this style. I'll do my best to improve and create more. I also want to give a big thank you to my members. I truly appreciate your support. If you're looking for a similar story, check out the one on screen. Lastly, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Stay creepy and see you in the next story.